This is Doing Virtue.
Podcast.
Virtue is what we do. Cheers. All right. Tonight we have a awesome guest, Alex Bragwell. I've never met him in person, but we've messaged on Instagram a few times, and we bonded, I think, first over Rascal Flatts. And he posted something about Rascal Flatts, and I was like, I just happened to see you because we follow some of the same people, and I commented, and then ever since I've been watching you, and you're obviously an actor and involved in film and very passionate about film, and you've been pretty outspoken about Sound of Freedom and The Shift and some of these other great movies that have come out. And I actually I see a Sound of Freedom poster behind you, so yeah, nice. So anyway, without further ado, Alex, welcome to the Doing Virtue podcast.
I'm glad to be on here, man. Yeah, you meant you mentioning about Rascal Flatts. I'm glad I have somebody to talk to because even my closest friends are like, they're not fans, but I'm a big fan of them.
Yeah, for sure. They're an awesome band. That's still recording. Can't see the light.
I don't know. Keep talking.
Okay. So Alex, for anyone who doesn't know you, could you just give us maybe like a 5 minute, maybe that's honestly too long, just a quick summary of like who you are, where you're from, how you got involved in acting, what led you to be passionate about film, just like kind of a quick recap on who you are.
All right. Well, my name is Alex. I'm currently based in Alabama. Uh, I'm wanting to move around sooner or later, but I'm really started my love for film when I was like younger. What I do remember is my first films I ever watched. Well, what introduced me to film was the Indiana Jones movie. And so that's what really kickstarted my drive into loving movies, starting out as an actor, because I didn't know anything about behind the scenes stuff when I was younger. I feel like most kids don't really yet. Um, After that, I started my love for acting, so I did a lot of community theater and just on my own personal projects. Now I'm in college and I do theater there while also doing more studies for cinematic arts.
Awesome. What college are you at right now?
I currently go to Wallace State Community College.
Okay, awesome. And are you majoring in film or acting or anything like that, or is that just one of the things that you're pursuing there?
Uh, Currently, I'm just doing theater there because they sadly don't have a film program, but I am graduating actually this May and transferring over to a different college to actually get a degree into cinematic arts.
Okay, awesome. Congratulations on your upcoming graduation. What school are
Like
you going to be attending afterwards?
my current top choice right now would be the University of North Alabama, or UNA for short. I've been there a few times looking at their campus, and I've always thought they were a great school. They recently added their cinematic arts program. They didn't used to have it. Now they finally have one, and so that's just a good check mark on my list.
Yeah, for sure. Um, One of the reasons that I think I started following you online is because we follow a bunch of the same people, like Bonfire Legends, Daily Wire, a bunch of the Daily Wire hosts. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know if the algorithms popped you up, or maybe I think maybe I saw you reposted in something that like Bonfire Legends posted. Um, when did you start following the Daily Wire? And do you have any future aspirations for either working for them or at least just kind of staying connected with Bonfire Legends?
I really started to get to know the Daily Wire through 2021. Uh, that's when I was just exploring around streaming and all that, finding new services. And so that's when they released their first film, Run, Hide, Fight, which I have a poster in front of me, which y'all guys sadly can't see of it. Um, I watched that and I thought it's one of the best films I have ever seen. Like it was amazing to the point that I need to find out who made this movie.
Mm.
So found out who they all were, like Bonfire Legend with Dallas. Uh, I followed him, and luckily he followed me back at that point because he saw my love for the movie. He was very passionate about saying thank you for the support I was giving, and that's when I started to like more get in depth with the Daily Wire. Because I didn't, full honesty, I didn't know the company existed at first, Daily Wire, because I'm not. I want to say that I'm that enthralled into the news. Um, So it was a good find for them because it's like, oh wow, I really like their content and what they post through their news or through their
Mhm.
production. So I started with that. And basically after Run Hide Fight and through their next movies, I basically just started a connection with them. I don't really have a like personal connection with them, but they're they seem like really nice people from when I've met them before. And I have one script that I've been working on for the past 2 years now, with a bunch of other scripts that I've been currently working on, uh, that I want to send to Dallas, and hopefully maybe that could be a project we could work on together.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I saw that you attended the premiere, I think, of Terror on the Prairie in Nashville. How did you swing that? Like, did you just reach out to them? Did you buy a ticket? Like, what went into that?
It was more of just a personal invite. I was messaging uh, Dallas for a bit, just being like not being a constant messenger of like bothering him at every moment, but just asking him questions about filmmaking because he's a talkative guy. He's a very kind guy too. If you ask him a question, he will give you an answer. Um, yeah, I was just having conversations with him about filmmaking, and I told him I was a big fan of the movies they were making, and that hopefully I'd love to meet them one day and maybe even work with them. And after I sent that message of hoping to meet them one day, he sent me a thing saying, "Well, how would you like to come to the premiere for Terror on the Prairie?"
Wow.
And I said, I texted back in like a millisecond, like absolutely.
That's totally cool. And were you following the production of that movie, or were you just like Daily Wire's making a movie, I'm in, like without really knowing much about it?
I knew bits because they were really kind of keeping the movie secret through production. Like there was that little era of them like keeping it secret where like Gina Carano is making a new movie. They're filming it in Montana. Then after that, they started releasing, like posters and trailers. So at that time when he invited me, I didn't think there was a poster or even a trailer yet, but I did know the movie existed, but I didn't know what it was about. I just knew a title.
Okay. Yeah, it does with that, I think specifically with the politics that were surrounding Gina Carano at the time, they were trying to flex that they had her in a movie, but they weren't trying to
Yes,
like reveal what it was too quickly. But yeah, I actually haven't seen Run what's the first one? Shut In, or what
Run,
was
Hide,
the
Fight.
Run Hide Fight? Yes, I haven't seen that one. Um, but the is it the third one? I'm trying to remember the order because I remember I think that Run Hide Fight was the first one that they did, right? And then Terror on the Prairie, and then there's the I forget what the title is, but there's the one where the woman's locked in the pantry.
Shut
That's
in.
that's Shut In, yeah.
That's Shut In. Okay, was that the third one, or was that
No,
earlier?
Run, Hide, Fight was the first movie. That movie was already made before they bought it. Like that's when
Oh, okay.
Dallas bought them or started to work with them. Then they made Shut In, which was their first like original production, and then their third was Terror. That's when like their biggest what they had since they had Gina.
How
Okay.
would how
Yeah.
would you rank the three in your personal opinion?
That's a tough question, my dude. Uh, well, with the three, I would probably put Run, Hide, Fight still as first because I have just never seen a film like that. Like I've messaged the director and writer of that movie too, Kyle Rankin. He's a very kind dude. He's made a new movie that's coming out. There's nothing out about it yet. Kept it secret, but I'll be excited when that comes out.
Mm.
Uh, Second place would probably be Terror. I love the uniqueness of it. I've talked to the director of that, Michael Polish, as well, and he was kind. Have you seen Terror yet?
Yeah,
Yes, I
we
have.
watched.
We watched it. I think overall it was pretty decent, and I think especially because it was a very original film, I did like it. There were definitely parts where I thought there was like maybe slight plot holes or things where it's
Yes.
like realistically the character's not going to do this or whatever, but I did like how rural it was. It felt very raw. And it also was awesome that like they had Gina Carano, like just being able to honestly just land her as an actress, even if you thought the movie was terrible, the fact that they were able to steal her from Disney and put her in a big film is a pretty cool feat anyway. So, um,
Like of course it is. Like what they got there was like a gem that they had. I got to meet her at the premiere, and she was extremely kind. She was one of the most loving people I have ever met. I
Hmm,
got a photo with her as well, but yeah, I just really liked her because like noticing like there was no score to the movie, like it was felt
Mm.
every some scenes were so silent, but some scenes were just so loud thanks to the gunshots. So I really like that. So in third place would be Shut In, and putting it in third place doesn't make it bad, but it's amazing. I consider it like I love tight thrillers,
hmm.
movies that are like I guess stuck in one place really, and they got to try to move around that one location.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I actually I don't think I've seen that all the way through. I've seen I think I started it and I didn't finish it because my subscription ended and then I was like, oh, I can't renew until next month or something. So I didn't finish it, but I have seen I don't know if you've seen this, but they locked a bunch of the Daily Wire hosts in that in that room, or at least
yeah,
a recreation of that room. So they like paired them off. And so they're all going through. So as I was I think it's like an hour, 45 minutes or something. As I was watching that, I was like, oh, this thing is important in the movie, even though I haven't seen it. Like they kept, putting clues in like a book and money and, just different things they were scattering around. So I like that they did that. That's pretty funny. Um,
yeah, I love that little content they do for all their upcoming projects. Like, well, they're like with that one, they did a lot of publicity because that was their first original production, which was cool for them to do. Like when anytime they released a movie, they did those little featurettes of like behind the scenes or interviews, like you can find on their website or you can find on YouTube. But their newest film, as you know, Lady Ballers, didn't get a lot of promotion
Mm.
yeah.
because trying to keep it secret through filming.
Right. What were your thoughts on now? I know earlier you mentioned that you're not super into politics, or at least you weren't originally. But it seems that like wokeness has really gotten into a lot of new films. And so it's refreshing when you have films like Top Gun Maverick, or you have just films that are entertaining. And that doesn't mean that films can't teach a moral lesson or can't extend into political realms. But it seems to me that if you're not going to push a political message right in someone's face, it really should just be entertaining. And unfortunately, a lot of films now just seem to be preach, like they're just preaching something. And depending on where you fall in the political spectrum, maybe you enjoy it. But I think for a lot of more conservative minded people, that is really frustrating because you'll have a movie that overall is pretty decent, and then there's some immorality in there, or it's just pushing agendas that you just don't want to think about. Like you're just there to see the movie. So, what are your thoughts on, I guess, number one, having woke ideology or wokeness in movies, and then number two, like what's the path forward? Like, is it get on board with the Daily Wire or companies like that are trying to just promote solid entertainment, or is it just kind of like the luck of the draw where we just have to? It's like whatever comes out, we're gonna watch, you know?
Well, after finding the Daily Wire, that is when I became more politically opinionated. Like before, like I said, when I was through high school and all of that, I didn't really keep up with it because I was just focusing on my own, like just high school and all that. Um, so after I found the Daily Wire and started watching hosts like Shapiro or Knowles or Walsh, like I got to meet them at the premiere too. Knowles would probably be my favorite host, and he was the one I had the longest conversation with, and he was one of the best dudes out there. Um, so after I found DW, that's when I became more opinionated with what I believe is right and wrong. Uh, for me, I would fall a bit more to the right, in my opinion. So with wokeness, I agree. Yes, we don't need to have it in movies. Like there's a thin line that you got to have between filmmaking and that kind of preaching. Because me as a filmmaker, I just see it as more of bringing entertainment to all audiences. Like I have my political opinions, yes, but for me, even if I'm like far right or just right, whatever political opinion you are, I believe people should keep that to their own personal opinions and keep it out of the writing spectrum.
Hmm.
Um, for me, when I write my scripts, I never really express my political opinions in my scripts because I believe in just entertaining the audience, giving them a thrilling, fun story, even or maybe it's not even a fun story, maybe a sad story, depending on the genre. But through that, that's what I believe in is
Hmm.
enter pure entertainment. Because earlier today, I was watching the new Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and I saw that back in theaters when it came out, but I just got the physical of it, which I believe physical media matters more than streaming.
Hmm.
Uh, that's the kind of movies I like because Christopher McQuarrie is one of the best writers out there, and I can kind of guess what his political opinions are, but from watching Mission Impossible, I don't see it at all. I just see him
Yeah,
telling a story about Ethan Hunt and this new villain and all these other action-packed sequences, and
yeah,
those are
for
the kind of
sure.
movies I love. I bel I do believe we got to have less of woke in movies. Now, I do believe in having people can be whoever they want in movies. That's the joy of it. And I'll work with anybody on my things. It's like if you respect my opinion on what I'm making, you can work with me because I believe in the kindness of the world. But there are some people that don't, and like how they did with Gina or maybe other people, it's unfair to have one side be with it and the other not. So
Yeah. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that nowadays you're persecuted for not just believing like some maybe far right or overly like in some people's mind overly Christian beliefs. It's like you be persecuted for much less, if you're not completely on board with the transgender ideology, if you're not completely on board with all of this, all of the political things that are being pushed, especially on kids and things like that. If you're not on board with that, you're out. So I'm really excited that the Daily Wire has started doing stuff on their own because I think originally their plan was to take over Hollywood in Hollywood and try to make better movies in Hollywood. And then they just realized that like, no, there's no one that we can talk to. Like no one will even hear us out because we're going to say, hey, we want to make a movie about making fun of, men on women's sports teams or something. And that would never fly, you know? So, um, yeah, and I think there's definitely some fair criticism of Lady Ballers in some of the ways that it was and some of the ways that it was done, but I am glad that they decided we want to make a movie about this and we don't really care that it's edgy and we don't really care that it's uncomfortable. And then part of the reason why it's successful is because it's uncomfortable, right? Because it's showing you how ridiculous that whole ideology is. And it's kind of genius because they're showing that it's ridiculous without saying it because the entire movie they're saying no, like we're on board with this, like they're obviously it's satirical, but they're kind of trying to preach to the choir and say, oh no, really, like we're on board with this, but obviously you see as the movie unfolds that clearly it doesn't work and they're they're making fun of it, not supporting it. So um yeah, I think more content like that is good, and I think as time goes on they'll get better about honing in what their base wants and also what messages they need to push in order to stay different from the left. So um
like through all of that, I'm loving what they're doing. Like every film they made, including Lady Ballers, it was funny and I found it unique in that kind of era. Like it was Jeremy Boring's like first directorial thing. I saw that when I was like, oh, he directed it, and so I thought he did good with that. So it's good to have movies like that of
mm,
not being scared of what comedy is. For me, I'm not much of a comedy writer. If I try to write comedy, I think it kind of falls flat because I'm not a comedian. So I write more thriller stuff. I write more action stuff. So I kind of keep in my own zone of what I know I can write. So seeing a film like that, I found it genuinely funny. It reminded me of like, in a good way, it reminded me of like early 2000s comedies that
mm,
Mhm.
always
yeah, yeah.
make me laugh. So it felt like a breath of fresh air of what we needed in like that specter because comedy has become a era of just not trying to think of the words here. Uh, it's become very sensitive.
Yeah.
It's it's what you can make a joke about, what you cannot make a joke about.
Hmm.
It really,
Well, that's
I
the
miss the
big
days of
yeah, that's the
that
bit. I
kind
mean,
of
that's kind
comedy.
of the big argument with like shows like The Office, where it has a huge fan base now. But if any network tried to put out that show with some of the comments and some of the jokes that they make in that show, it wouldn't go today. And the only reason that it's still available, I think, and hasn't been like taken off all these platforms is because it's so successful that they're like, well, we're going to lose so much money, so well, I guess we'll keep it. And at the end of the day, really, it comes down to money. So they are going to keep it. But if you tried to release The Office today, that would not fly. Like no one could do it. But it does show that's like, well, comedy is supposed to be making fun of reality, and sometimes reality is ridiculous. And if you start banning that and saying, no, you can't make fun of that reality because that could hurt someone, it's like, well, but where else are you going to do it if you're not going to do it in comedy? Like once comedy dies, then reality is only what whoever's in charge says that it is.
I think we all are also starting to see sort of comedians, like really popular comedians are popular because they're not afraid of making fun of both sides, and it's like making fun of the reality. Shane Gillis, who's I'm sure is a leftist, or Joe Rogan, I'm sure is a leftist. They're very like clear that they can make fun of both sides, and they're really popular for it.
Yeah, like even on the right too. Like they've become like Joe Rogan has become almost like right leaning in many ways because he'll say, well, wait a second, like I'm pro these leftist views, but also I think that you should be able to make fun of this. And everyone on the left is like, no, you can't make fun of that. And he still wants to. And he has a big enough podcast where it's like, who's going to stop me? And then all of a sudden he's in the right category by default, which is kind of amusing in itself, that he's become trusted news. Like, yeah, it's wild. It really is.
I remember when Spotify tried to like kick him off there for a bit, but that obviously did not work.
Yeah. Yeah, try kicking off someone who gets like what is it, like 11 million downloads every day or something. Um, I want to circle back quickly to so you said you went to the premiere. What was that experience like? Was there like a cocktail hour beforehand where you get to meet the hosts, or was there like afterwards there's a line that forms and you meet them? What did that look like?
So it was actually a pretty small premiere. Like not, I wouldn't say like people wise because there was a lot of people, but location wise, it was the first time I ever had to wear like a full on suit to the thing because they said there was like dress codes to the thing. I mean, I've wore like formal clothes before, but this I was like, oh, I had to get like a full suit and tie and put things on my arms or whatever. So when I went there, they had it at a AMC theater, which I was not expecting until I saw it in the email that I received. So I arrived there, and I've been to a bunch of AMC theaters because I like traveling around and seeing different types of ways to watch movies. Um, I went there, and they had a bar in the theater, which I knew AMC had a bar, the MacGuffin's bar, but the one I go to doesn't. Uh, this was a pretty big AMC theater, and when I got there, they had like a table with these four people sitting, uh, asking your name, and when you said their name, they look it up in a book, and they give you your ticket. And that's basically what I got. I got a ticket to see the movie, and it gave me another piece of paper, or more of a ticket wise, saying after party at this hotel. And so that's what basically happened with that. While we were waiting on the whole interview phase to go through, like they had the red carpet there with the sign on the back. They had the name of the movie, the production companies and their logos, the photographers taking photos. That's where I got to talk with Michael for a bit. He was waiting in line, and I saw him, and I thought I'd give it a shot because like I was just walking around in there, and I look in the crowd, I was like, "That's Michael Knowles." So
What was that like talking to him? Was it pretty surreal?
it was very surreal. I was like, he still is my favorite podcaster to listen to. So meeting him was very, very like heartwarming because like that feeling of like you see somebody you're a fan of and you kind of have to have that your heart skips a beat like because like you don't believe it's real, but it's like I'm in the same room as this person.
Yeah, right.
So going in there, it was very nice. I just went up to him like I said hi, and we just had a full conversation about movies and what he likes and what's it like working at DW and all that. So he was a very chill dude. He didn't seem like when I was talking to him, it didn't seem like he wanted to walk away from me or he didn't find me annoying or anything. He was talking to me like I was one of his best friends.
Mm,
He genuinely is a good dude, and he'll talk to anybody if you talk to him.
yeah. I have a follow-up question. I am curious about your interactions with the other hosts, but I have a follow-up question to that. I don't know what faith you are. Like, I don't know. I'm assuming you're a Christian of some kind, just based on
I
your
am. Yeah.
what are you, if you don't mind me asking? Just to put you in a,
Uh,
I'm
I
not to put you in a religious box. I'm just
Mhm.
curious.
No, you're all right. I would classify myself as a Methodist.
Okay, so what you said that Michael Knowles is one of your favorite hosts, but he does talk about, like, obviously we're Catholic. He talks about Catholicism a lot. Um, is that something that you enjoy because he talks about it in a way that's not pushy, or do you find that like, oh, I wish he wouldn't talk about that. I wish he would just stick to politics. Like, what are your thoughts on that as a Methodist?
No, I love hearing his opinion on it because there are so many versions, of Christianity, and I find it
Mm,
unique listening about all the different types. It's like, wow, there's so many of them. And so hearing his beliefs on it and also your beliefs from y'all being the same, I don't have a problem with it because I honestly really do love listening to when he talks about it, like bringing in
mm,
the religious talk versus his political talk. That's why I like his podcast the most, is because it feels like he's talking about what he likes, what he
Mm.
loves. And so that's what I enjoy the most. It doesn't feel like it's bearing to listen to.
yeah,
It feels like listening to the podcast, it feels like I'm having a conversation with him, like I'm sitting across the table with him right as he's talking to me. Not to say that the other DW hosts don't have, like, they have a problem with listeners. They don't. Like, I love listening to Walsh. I love listening to Shapiro. But with Michael, I see it as I'm talking to a friend.
Mm.
And
mhm.
so hearing him talk about that, I find it very much enjoyable. So I don't see a problem with it at all.
Okay, good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. I've talked to a few other people that have either had interactions with him or know people that know him, and they all kind of say the same thing, that he's just a really genuine guy. And I honestly think, regardless of if you're Catholic or just some denomination of Christian, I think it's really good to have someone who's in the political space, who's saying the things that need to be said, is unapologetically Catholic and Christian, but is not like on a bad list. It's not like, oh my gosh, every time he starts talking, it's just this argument. He's just like, this is what Catholics believe. This is the reason behind it. And if you're curious, look up this book, and then onto a political thing. And it's not, and it's something where it's like, okay, yeah, like that answered my question, or it made me curious about more, but it didn't take away from, it didn't make me want to turn off the podcast. And it's the same thing with, I think he may do it a little bit better. But Ben Shapiro does that a lot, where he'll talk about his Jewish faith and the things that the way that he celebrates, or what this translation means, or whatever. And then he'll get it right into politics. And I don't see a problem with it. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. I learned something about what he personally believes, and also what Orthodox Jews believe. But it didn't seem like an hour and a half podcast about Judaism, because that's not why I
Yeah.
tuned in. So that's good to hear. Yeah, he's really cool. I'm also excited that he launched his cigar brand. It's just such a Michael Knowles thing to do, like
Of
his
course,
Mayflower cigars. I just thought that was hilarious. Um,
out of all the people to do it there, of course it'd be him.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, for
Right.
sure. What was it like meeting the one and only Ben Shapiro? How did that go down?
Okay, now sadly, I did not get to meet him at the
Oh,
premiere.
you didn't? Okay, okay.
He was currently out of the country filming some other thing of his. I forgot which one it was, but it was one of the
Oh,
events he did.
okay. Yeah, do you know if that was the same time when he was doing the stuff with Jordan Peterson, when they were? I feel like he was gone for a while with Jordan Peterson in like Jerusalem or something. I don't know if that was the same time.
I think that was it because
Okay.
I remember him being in those areas like with all the religious architecture and all that. I
Yeah.
forgot which country it was in, but I think that was when it was happening. I wanted to meet him, but I didn't get the chance. But again, hopefully one day I do get to.
Yeah, yeah, the next premiere, right?
Yeah,
So what about the other
I can dream.
exactly, as can we. What about the other hosts? It sounds like you talked for Michael, or you talked to Michael for a bit longer, or maybe it was a bit more casual. Did the other hosts feel like you were kind of bombarding them a little bit more, or um
Not really. They were just on their own little like thing through the premiere. I didn't see Andrew Clavin. I'm pretty sure he didn't go.
Okay.
Or I might be mistaken again. I might have forgotten, but I didn't see him there. But again, he might have been there.
They're in
Uh,
disguise or something.
yes, he had a wig on,
Right. Just a
but
toupee.
exactly, wig on, no glasses. He was unrecognizable. Um,
Totally changed.
so I saw Brett Cooper there. She was cool. Uh, I didn't talk to Walsh a lot because he was. I don't mean this in like a bad way to him, but I think he's kind of intimidating.
Oh, I mean, he's a tall, bearded dude. I mean, just I didn't meet him, but he came that whole I don't know if you again, you said you weren't really caught up on politics a whole lot, so maybe you don't remember, but there was this big thing that happened in Loudoun County with transgender bathroom thing. And it was this whole deal here in Virginia. And he came to Virginia. His family's from Virginia, but he found friends here. He came here, and then he was going to speak in front of the school opposing the transgender bathroom policy just to make a point. And then they told him a couple days before that he couldn't because he wasn't a resident of Virginia. So he signed a lease with some friends that he had out here, like a temporary lease, so that he was technically, a Virginia resident. So me and a couple of friends, we went and we didn't really get to talk to him, but we saw him walk by, and I was like, wow, he's really tall. I didn't recognize. So when the documentary, What is a Woman came out, I think there's a part of it where he's giving that speech. Um, and I remember watching it and I was like, I'm almost in that shot. Like I remember this guy standing next to me, and then the camera guy told me to move, and then I wasn't in it. But it's okay.
But yeah, I wasn't expecting how tall he was because my height currently is 6'3". So when I walk up to him, I was like another head shorter than him.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So
Yeah.
I was like, hi, thank you.
Yeah. Well, and you also can't tell because on all the streams, like they all look the same height, right? Like I know Ben Shapiro is short, but like you don't really see it because they're all sitting right in the middle of the camera. But if they all stood up, you'd be like, oh wow, he's way taller. Um,
So
I
I
mean,
didn't talk to him a lot because, like I said, I felt kind of intimidated, but
yeah.
I knew he wasn't going to be rude or anything that I knew of. So I talked to him for a bit and just got a photo with him, so that was cool. But I let him go on. But the reason I talked to Michael the most was that he came in onto a conversation and just joined in.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wish more people in politics were like that, that not only just going to a conference and speaking to a bunch of people, but then afterwards just like, yeah, I'll kind of hang out with whoever's here. Like you bought tickets, I'm here, let's hang out. Like I think that's a really a good way to get the dialogue open, especially after maybe a rousing speech.
Now, I do remember one funny thing. I can't remember their first names, but it was the three hosts of Crane and Co. They were all there, and they were just running around the building because they were currently watching some sports game. I can't remember if it was football or
Hilarious.
basketball, but it was one of they were just running around, and one of them just comes up to me and and just tells me to score. I was like, really? Because I was like, I didn't know what they were talking about. I was like, really? They looked excited. I don't know what game they were looking at, but I went with it and it said, that's cool.
Sounds like a bunch of kids. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I haven't watched a whole lot of their show, but the parts that I have watched, it's like I thought Dude Perfect was kind of crazy for all the stuff that they do, but they at least like they have like some organization and they've got like different videos and different challenges. And for them, they're just like shooting a podcast in a room that has like a putting green and a hoop, and they're just like quick timeout for a free throw contest. We're like, what? How is this content? But they're doing really well. So good on them.
I have seen a few bits and pieces of Crane and Co., but I don't really consider myself that much of a sports fan. My family would be considered fans of Alabama through football because even me not watching sports, that's technically what I'm in because of my family. But it's some of their content is really fun to watch, even if I don't really keep up with the sports aspect of life. I just think they're just really fun to listen to. But like I said, I'm not an avid viewer.
Yeah. Yeah, they just seem really wholesome, and it's also nice because I think they're the only show where there's more than one host. And so it's nice to have three of them because it's not just a podcast almost monologue. It's just the three of them are just kind of hanging out. So it's a little bit less formal, which if you want the formal news is a bad thing, but if you just want like some entertainment, they seem to be pretty entertaining. So Yeah, that's awesome. So, so you went to that premiere, and then was that the first time that you met Dallas? Is it Sonnier, or I've seen it
I
spelled. I've
pronounce it.
never.
Sorry, what?
I was just gonna say I've seen it spelled, but I've never heard it pronounced.
From what I've heard and from what I know, I think it is Sonnier.
Sonnier.
Like,
Okay.
so if I am somehow wrong too, I'd love to be corrected, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah, tell him to call me
Uh,
directly, and I'd love that. No.
you
Was
got to
that the
give
first
a
time you met
one
him
of
in person then?
Yes, it was. Like I said, we messaged for a good bit. Just me telling him how much of a fan I am, and telling him like what my ideas of what if me as a filmmaker, what I believe in and what I want to make is how like he made Run, Hide, Fight and all of his other movies before he worked with Daily Wire, like Bone Tomahawk or The Standoff at Sparrow Creek. I loved those movies and how tight knit they were. I mean,
Mm,
Bone Tomahawk did more traveling, but it still felt tight due to the characters, and that's why I loved it. So I loved his idea of filmmaking, and watching Run I Five was like, this guy has the same idea of filmmaking that I do.
mm,
So talking to him about that was great, and meeting him in person was even better because he was like Michael. He's a chatterbox of a dude. He loves talking about movies as well. Because from what I remember, I think he said his favorite movie ever is Top Gun, which is valid. Uh, And I was talking about Top Gun Maverick because I saw that movie multiple times in theaters that summer. So getting to talk to him about that and me talking like, man, I there's one idea I'm working on and I'd love to show it to you one day when I finish it. And he told me like, whenever you do, send it my way. It's like, awesome.
Oh, that's really awesome. And he's I don't think he's in charge of the new the Pendragon cycle, right? Is he the main director for that too?
He is the main producer, yes. Like him in charge of it. I know there are other producers involved, like Travis Mills. I saw him at the premiere, which I didn't get to talk to him because I like I said I didn't see him, but I found out he was at the premiere. But I've messaged him online before, and he's cool from what I know. I know Travis is a producer on it, but I think Dallas is still like the main overhead of everything,
Okay.
while Jeremy is more of the creator, developer of the show, and also directing a few episodes himself,
Yeah. I think when I
which
was
I am very excited.
yeah, I'm from what I've seen, the quality of the cinematography seems really awesome. I like how they have such a big cast because if they had just a small cast and it's like, some random extras that don't really play a role, it'd just be like, okay, it seems kind of low budget, but it seems like they're really like they're traveling around, like they're all of the different like little behind the scenes clips that they're posting on YouTube or on Instagram. It's like this seems legit, even just in like the bits and pieces. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think when we were messaging, you told me that you auditioned for it or reached out about auditioning for it. Is that right?
Yes, I was told by Dallas. Well, also their casting director David Galilamo was there, and so I talked to him about it. And I said, "How do I audition for stuff?" Because I was wanting to learn more. And so he's one of the few casting directors I know that'll watch all the auditions because there are some where you have to have an agent versus
Mm.
some where you don't have to. But David does both. He looks at actor auditions with and without agents, kind of like how Dallas does with scripts. He will listen to scripts that don't have a copyright yet versus do with an agent. So, which I don't have an agent myself yet, but one day I, I will if
Nice.
I find one near me.
Yeah, yeah.
But whenever I do find the right one, uh, I'm currently non-union without having an agent. So he told me to send in my headshot and just do that. And so Dallas posted on his Instagram about auditions for Pendragon. And so I took the chance. I contacted David, and he sent me a bunch of list of characters, and I read which ones matched my description the most, or almost did. And so I auditioned for those. He sent me bits and pieces of the scripts of what characters I needed to read and sent it in. Now, obviously, since the show was filmed, I didn't get the part, but I find it very gracious that I just had the chance to do it.
Yeah. Did you get an official like thanks but no thanks email, or is it just like we'll call you if you're in it, otherwise, next time kind of thing?
I didn't get anything because that's usually how some auditions go is you don't they don't send you an email saying you didn't get the part because who knows how many people audition for that same role. So you really just find out whenever it gets announced, say through a news outlet or when they make videos of the production.
Okay. So if you had gotten a role or in the future in like the next 6 months or something like that, if you land a major role like that, would you not go to further schooling, or would you just postpone that or try to do both? Like what would your plan be if that a big opportunity like that popped up?
I was I was preparing if I did get a role in Pendragon. So with me being in school, if I did get the role, and on the email they said before you audition you had to be free from a multiple period of months.
Right.
So you had to be dedicated to it. And so if I did get the role, I was just going to postpone my schooling like until I got back, and then if nothing else happens, I'd continue my schooling if I could. So
Okay. And what was I know I Googled it but I forgot to write it down. What was the other upcoming show that's going to be put out after the Pendragon cycle that they bought the rights for? I think you said that you're hoping to be on board with that project if possible.
now I really am excited for that project because there have been other adaptations of it. It's Anne Rand, is that her name?
It
The
might
author?
be. I can't remember
Well,
the author.
it's her book Atlas Shrugged. It's a little bit of a sci-fi thriller.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right. And did they tell you about that, or is that something that was announced? Because I haven't heard the Daily Wire like officially announce that unless I missed it. So is that just something that's like for anyone involved in the film world, this is kind of upcoming, we're doing auditions, hush hush kind of thing.
I haven't got anything that I know of. I just know they have the rights back when they did their little town hall things with Jeremy. Like
Okay.
he announced they got the rights to Pendragon and they got the rights to Atlas Shrugged. So I think Atlas Shrugged might be their next thing. But again, I don't have a pure confirmation on it. That's just what I remember them being announced through like Deadline or the Hollywood Reporter.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that would be cool to be involved in if possible. If you can audition and get land a role in that, that would be pretty huge.
Because I've been listening to the audiobook of the first book because that's one of my problems with books. I can't hold a book. I have to listen to books. Uh, but I've been listening to it and I'm enjoying it. But I also found there was 3 movies made already of Atlas Shrugged.
Hmm.
So I've been meaning to get around to watching those. And in the third movie, part three, the lead actor of The Shift, Christopher Palaha, actually plays a lead role in that. So I'm like, very excited to get to that one.
That's kind of a good transition because I was just about to ask you about Angel Studios and just kind of your thoughts on what they're doing over there. It seemed like just based on a few of your Instagram stories and things like that, that you're a big fan of The Shift and The Chosen and some of their other projects that they're cranking out. And I wouldn't call them a Daily Wire alternative because they're a bit smaller, but also some of their content that they're putting out is really, really top notch and really um, just really well done. So yeah, are you a big fan of Angel Studios or just some of the movies they've been putting out or what?
I am absolutely a big fan of them. Uh, I do consider my 2 favorite movie companies now. Like I find independent filmmaking some of the best kind of filmmaking because there are so many movies nowadays, whether it be through like we've mentioned before, wokeness, or just the movies also just being blatantly bad.
Mm.
Um, Not a lot of big movies are doing that nowadays. But I have watched so many more independent films last year that were better than most of the Hollywood movies that came out in theaters.
Wow. Wow.
So with the Daily Wire and Angel Studios, I consider them basically my 2 favorite independent companies of current filmmaking. Like I dream to work with those 2 specifically.
Mm.
Yeah. And would your preference be to work with them as an because it seems like you're both an actor, but you also are either a director or at least a like a script writer of some sort. So would your ideal setup be acting and directing or writing, or would you pick one if you kind of had to pick one?
I would love to see I would love to see myself doing like the I'd say Kenneth Branagh approach of
Mm.
acting and directing.
Mm.
I I do love acting a lot. I really do. But asking me, I would love to do writing and directing more because
Okay.
that's what my real dream is of making the behind the scenes, the vision of the movie.
Yeah.
How many scripts have you sort of like produced or you've been working on just sort of your independent self?
Um, I've written a bunch of short films that have not got
Okay.
made yet. I've made one so far, but just mainly just because of college being very busy, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Um, but in my free time when I can, I write more feature length stuff now because like I
Nice.
liked writing short films, but I was like, I want to expand to
Mm,
making full stories. And when you do that, you got to know it takes a long period of time,
right.
depending on how long you want to make the story or how much care you want to put into it. So I started writing my first script, which I've titled "Stand Your Ground," which is a home invasion thriller.
Okay.
Uh, started writing that in the summer of 2022, and I finished it last year in the summer of 2023. Just in that whole span of writing a 90-page script, which is
Nice.
hold on a second, right here actually.
Nice.
Cool. Oh,
Oh,
that looks really
nice.
official.
It does. It's awesome.
I'm very happy I got that
Mm.
done. I'm doing a little bit of polishing up on it, just make sure it's like crystal clear, perfect.
Was
But
there a particular film that maybe that inspired that script, or is this totally just like I want a home invasion thriller and this is what I want the characters to be, and you just kind of cranked it out?
well, I would say it was really based on the idea of those small contained thrillers. Like I took inspiration from that horror movie, The Strangers Pray at Night, which I really liked. Then I also took inspiration off of, say, Terror on the Prairie or
Mm,
Shut It.
mm.
It was just that small idea of you're stuck in this one area and you have this many foes. How can this one character get out of this situation?
Nice.
Yeah, it's
So
kind
I
of
basically got inspiration.
okay,
What
awesome.
when you're writing a script, what do you like would in a perfect world the plot and the characters all kind of like it's nice and perfect and the characters grow and the plot is really exciting. What kind of do you like focus on in terms of like character development or plot driven or what do you sort of look for in when you're writing your own types of things?
Well, the story always comes first, I think, to like when I create the story, because like I get the idea and I instantly write it down to my notes to make sure I don't forget it. So I write that down, and then after I have like basically the teeniest, tiniest idea, I try to expand on it. But after I actually get the story idea, that's I
Mm,
heavily focus on characters because I
nice.
believe that is the most important idea of a movie is characters.
Mm,
And when giving my characters backstories or giving them an interesting purpose to them of why they are there, that's my favorite part is creating a person.
right.
Or say it's a sci-fi movie, creating an alien or something like that.
Mm,
Uh, that's my favorite part. But also another one of my favorite parts is just naming. I
mm,
love naming characters.
mm. That's awesome.
I try to give characters memorable names because you have so many memorable names out there. You have John McClane or Alan Grant or John Rambo. You just think about those names and they click. So anytime I write, I make sure that a name that I choose rolls off the tongue or makes sense towards it because I've watched so many bad movies over the years. I watch bad movies deliberately just to focus on what not to do.
Mm,
So there's so many names and movies or character names that are just boring. I remember seeing one movie. I can't remember what it was called, but a character's name was Jim John.
goodness.
So
The guy doing the screenwriting was like eating a sandwich while he was doing it. It was like, oh yeah, Jim John, that sounds great. That's not inspired at all.
so I try to give characters a unique name, but also not to the point that the name sounds ridiculous.
Mm,
Sure. And that
So
seems
it's
like
been
yeah, it seems like that's kind of key in a lot of at least like if it's a dialogue heavy script is having names that are easy to say and that are memorable and then being able to like just write punchy lines that aren't cheesy because a lot of movies are either like they try to sound dramatic but the stakes are so low that it's really cheesy or the
yeah.
stakes are pretty high and then the main character doesn't say anything like important and then you're like, well, this is your time to like step up and give a rousing speech and you're not doing anything or you're giving a rousing speech and it's just like to to no one, you know. So you kind of have two ends of the spectrum where it's like you kind of have to pick your place to write that, have that strong dialogue, and also know when it just needs to be uh you know, just a shot of a scene and not have anyone talking in the background, like when it's powerful enough to just have action and totally forget about dialogue. So um
So I agree with that. Like y- when you write a main character or a supporting character, they have to have a reason to be there because again, there have been so many movies I've watched where characters just show up and do nothing. Like they're just there. Which, if you talk about smaller roles, like say the main character passes by a cop that doesn't do anything, see that's fine because that's just a small nothing role. But if you give the cop a name and you give him something of a personality, it's like you have a character there now. You have to do something with that character.
Right.
yeah, and it
Like I
seems like,
say,
no, go ahead.
sorry. I say if you give one character, even if they're a minor character, one bit of information that makes them feel like a real person, they have to be important somehow.
Mm. Mm.
And I think that's where maybe writers that focus specifically on like thrillers or horror films or things like that should honestly look to well done like television shows or like things like The Office, Friends, you know, a lot of these big popular shows, is because they're so character heavy and they're story heavy too, but you can almost, after watching one of those shows, put yourself in that character spot and say, this is what they would choose. This is what they would say. This would make them mad. This wouldn't. These are their favorite things, likes and dislikes. And the reason that that's possible if it's well done is because a show is 10 seasons long, right? Whereas in a movie, you have way less time, but the ability to be able to say, you know, to introduce a character and then say this is their preference, or they're really afraid of guns, or, you know, to be able to set the stage for things, because otherwise you have all these things transpiring and none of it makes sense because you haven't introduced the audience to anything, and then it's just meaningless. You know, you just have all these random characters kind of just walking around.
So and that's another thing I agree with. Like, yeah, that is totally true. That I've watched so many TV shows over the years. Some have sadly been canceled, and some are still going. Um, but the one show I think is the best show I have ever watched so far. No show has been able to get to that level that I love is Daredevil when it used to be
Mm.
on Netflix. Those 3 seasons I think are perfection of television. And the closest show I think I have watched that has actually came close to that kind of perfection, well, is in second place for the best show I've ever seen is The Chosen.
Wow.
Okay, wow. It's funny you mentioned those two. Our two podcasts ago, we had on one of our friends, Sam Morales, who he's one of my Instagram followers. I follow him, and he runs this publication on Substack called 100 Movies Every Catholic Should Watch. And then within that, they do reviews of new release films and, you know, just popular films, oldies, throwbacks, things like that. But they just are going through all of these classic films and why they're good and why you should watch them. And I would encourage you to look them up and just see how much you agree with them. I think they're only up to like 40 something. So they're trying to do like a big reveal for 50 and a big reveal for 100. But a lot of the movies that you've mentioned are on that list. And I would be interested to see if you agree with a lot of their conclusions, because they're very focused on, you know, storytelling. What is the movie trying to say? Does it have good dialogue? Um, like, did I learn anything, or was it entertaining, or was it just kind of, you know, meaningless content? And he said I think he mentioned both of those shows as being two of his favorite shows because he was like, they're just well produced, good dialogue, the story is there, like it's just really well done. So clearly you both have good tastes in those things.
Thanks. Yeah, with Daredevil, I can't remember the name of the episode for my life. If I look it up now, I'll be mad at myself that I didn't remember it. But it's one episode in season 2. It's when the Punisher like is first in the first half of season 2. Basically the whole episode is Daredevil chained up to this chimney on top of the roof with Daredevil. And the entire episode, like I said, is basically just them two bickering back and forth on both of their ideologies of,
Mm.
Daredevil believes like Daredevil's a Catholic from what you've
Right.
seen in the show. His belief of people can change, there is goodness, and also he has that role of not killing, like how Spider-Man or other Batman does. Daredevil doesn't believe in killing. while the Punisher has the belief of nobody can change and the best thing to do is to put them into the ground. And so seeing those two ideologies fight or just argue with each other makes for some of the best dialogue I have ever heard or I've ever seen written.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen it, and I put it on my watch list after our other podcast, but now that it's been seconded, I'll definitely have to watch it. That to me, that seems like I don't know what your criteria is for. 'Cause we actually asked Sam about this, like what is your criteria for what's a good movie? Because I think that a TV show or maybe movies in different genres should be graded differently. Something that they try to do is like, does it display things that are true, that are good, that are beautiful? Is it trying to give you a better view of reality, or at least tell a story that is convincing, or that maybe changes your mind on something? Is that like those qualities, or is that something that you look for, or do you kind of stem out and be like, well, kind of terrible movie, but Hans Zimmer did the soundtrack, so love it, like because some people will do that where they'll pick an actor, they'll pick a director, they'll pick name anything, and because that person's involved, they'll say it's a good movie.
For me, when I watch movies, I want to be taken into another world, another thing that doesn't. I love real world stories like thrillers. Another show I thought was great was The Terminal List on Amazon Prime. Also, Reacher on Amazon Prime. I love those shows. Um, I love the grounded aspect of it, but also while these shows do take place in the real world, I'm still taken out of my own world.
Mm.
I'm not heavily reminded. I'm in my world. And so I believe with stories like that, or any stories, I want to not be reminded of life. Not in a bad way of life or anything. Like transport it into a story that I can follow around, follow these characters I like, and once the movie ends, I go back to me. I being taken away from the seat of inside a movie theater or taken away from my couch watching a show. It's that kind of idea of filmmaking I love, of being transported, being brought into the story. And so that's one thing I think that has a problem with most shows is they constantly want to remind you of things in the real world, which some things do matter. There are some subjects in the world that I believe do need to be told, like with Sound of Freedom. Like human trafficking is such a awful thing. And so seeing a film like that openly just not afraid to talk about this awful thing that needs to be exposed, but also give light to the situation. It's like we can try our best to help. So that's the kind of stuff I love. But there are some stuff, and I'm gonna pick on one studio here because they're bad at this, which is modern Netflix. Uh, Netflix has a problem of making shows that have a bunch of content that's like trying to spread awareness to a thing that does not matter, like a bunch of ideologies or saying what is bad versus what is good, like get canceled, don't get canceled. Basically like that. I think Netflix is one of the worst offenders out there of television. Same with like how Disney is one of the worst offenders of filmmaking.
Yeah. I was gonna you were talking about how when you watch a movie, one of the things that you're like the qualities you're looking for is being totally transformed or totally taken away in another world. Do you enjoy, or I don't know if you've been to Disney like theme parks, is that something that you enjoy about? Well, I guess I'll just ask you if you've ever been first, because if you haven't, then it won't matter. Do you go to like Disney or Universal or any theme parks like that?
I have never been to Disney World yet, but I do say I want to go there just so I can say I can go there. But
Yeah.
there are a few things I want to see there, honestly. Like I
Yeah.
love my favorite fictional character of all time is Indiana Jones, so yeah, I'd love to see that stunt show that they have.
Yeah,
Right.
and go on the ride. You really need to go on the ride if you can go. Well, no, it's just interesting because it seems like a lot of a kind of a common theme with filmmakers is they really do want to be taken up into the world. And when you go to Disney, and it's in a totally different way than a film, but being able to like wait in line for a ride and you have the music playing and you have like you're kind of like getting like little bits and pieces of the story, and especially with Indiana Jones when you're going through that whole ride, like you really kind of feel like you're like on a movie set or you're in the movie. Um, So yeah, that just made me curious to see if that was something that you enjoyed doing because it's so distant, but also in a very real way, like super closely connected with filmmaking and with that experience of reality in almost a fake way, but it's kind of exaggerated, but you believe it still. You know, you still feel like you're in that world.
And I do believe that theme parks are some of the best things out there. I've been to Six Flags. Like I said, I've been to Disney when I was like very younger, but since I don't remember it, I don't count it.
Yeah.
Uh, it was like it was when I was 2 years old, so it was one of those.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, theme parks are great. I do believe in that whole transportation of into a story, and like how you said, you reminded me like sometimes when you're waiting in line, like say you take the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, they have a story going on around you while you're just waiting in line,
Right.
Yeah.
and so I love that idea of it. But like I said, I do love being taken out of the world into a story. But I do care about movies that do talk about messages that do matter. I do watch movies that have a message that does need to be told. Like I said, when you talk about Sound of Freedom or say with The Shift, is message. It's it's mess. That's the only kind of movies that about the real world I want to watch. Messages that do matter, not
Yeah.
the say woke messages at all.
Right.
Right.
Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, has this article that he wrote way back when, obviously, on like a secondary world and taking aspects of reality in order to produce a secondary world that you can be transported into, whether that is with literature or whether that's with movies. As a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, um, and just I've seen this like recently on YouTube where people are saying like the Lord of the Rings trilogy is a masterpiece that we will never see ever again in cinema. And I wonder like what your take is on Hollywood as a whole, if quality, like that level of quality, if that's ever going to be repeated, or if there's just like this massive shift that needs to happen. Because Lord of the Rings is just one of those, both the trilogy and the books, you're transported into like a secondary world where you're just kind of completely overwhelmed by everything. And obviously that has a lot to do with the quality, but a lot of movies that you see now, you don't get that. And I wonder if we're ever going to see that in Hollywood ever again.
Now, I'm going to mention two things. The second one, I will answer that question. But the first one, I have so many people have gotten onto me about this. And I'll tell you now. I have never watched a Lord of the Rings movie.
Oh my.
All right. So yeah, thanks for coming on. No, I'm just kidding.
I have been told so many times by friends. Like I have one friend, he gets mad at me, so mad about it. And I tell him I will get around to it. It's just those things that I need to have a whole day off to do it.
All right, Alex, this is what I'm going to tell you. If you want to meet halfway, we live in Virginia, okay? You live in Alabama. If you want to meet halfway, I will treat you out and we'll find a theater that's going to play the extended version. It's going to be like a 10-hour day. We will sit and we will watch all of them and then we'll critique them afterwards, even though there's not a lot to
No,
critique.
look, no, I'd love to do it. Give me a shot at it, and we can plan it out. But to mention that, I do know the movies are great, so I will stay with that. Um, but with that quality, uh, no, as of right now, we cannot reach that same kind of quality from what I've known from that kind of age of the, those movies came out in the early 2000s, right?
Yep. Yep.
From what I remember. That era through the 90s and through the 80s, it's that peak of filmmaking, I think. Now we do have those gems of say 2010s to maybe a few gems we have now through the 2020s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, I think Hollywood needs to get their act together, have a big shift into it, because with what they are producing now, with so much stuff coming out, it's not resonating. They come up with these original ideas and they say it's original, but then you watch it and then it's not good. Like I said, whether it be through forced messages or just bad filmmaking in general, they're not that good. And so they see that and they go, oh, let's just reboot another thing. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
remake another. So it's falling behind into their own pit of what I think of self-despair. That's why I think independent filmmaking is doing so good because they know what audiences want. They know what, like I said, what messages matter and what kind of filmmaking matters,
Mm.
whether it be through Daily Wire or whether it be through Angel Studios. They know what the audiences wants. I'm sorry. I'm a member of Angel Studios' Angel Guild. Like I pay for their subscription. And seeing that all their movies they release are audience chosen,
Mm.
that's perfect. Knowing what the audiences want and giving that to them. Like we're not gonna make a movie that will it make fun of the audience or anything like that. This is what y'all want to watch. We're gonna make it. And I love that. That's the kind of filmmaking that deserves to be seen more. That's why I'm happy this movie became a success. That's why I gave so much support for The Shift, because meeting the filmmakers behind that was great. Meeting Brock Heasley and Ken Carpenter, seeing their dedication for it, of Brock telling his ideals of being a Christian while also giving us a unique sci-fi story. It's original. It's perfect. It doesn't make fun of you. It doesn't feel like there's no driving force behind it telling you like, oh, believe this, believe this. You don't believe this, you're bad.
Mm.
Um, it's what we need. And Hollywood doesn't know that. They are going the completely different route, making movies nobody cares about or remaking movies that people didn't want. Like, there are so many movies out there that are perfect. They try to remake Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. No. They try to remake Jaws. No. They try to remake Back to the Future. No. It's not going to work because that is not what we want because we already have those movies and those are perfect. So, to my opinion, from all that rambling, they need to get their act together. We need to have a shift of
Mm.
Hollywood, of them looking at audiences,
Mm.
seeing what people are going to watch,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing what we like. Now, there is one theory in Hollywood. I truly believe this theory. Uh, did y'all ever go and watch Barbie?
Nope.
Good. uh, uh,
Sorry,
I did.
I should answer audibly. Absolutely not. I did not go see it, but I did watch Ben Shapiro's 40-minute rant on it, so I felt like that counted.
Good. That's a better alternative than actually watching the movie. But I did go see it, and I did it mainly because of the Barbenheimer thing. I was into that. So Oppenheimer was a way better movie. It's 10 times better, in my opinion, as of right now. I would love Sound of Freedom to get nominated for an Oscar, but knowing the Academy,
Mm.
that's never going to happen.
Right.
So Oppenheimer is my best choice. So I want that to win Best Picture. But getting back to it, Barbie, uh, it's not good for one thing. Uh, it made a lot of money. Yes, it did. And people have argued with my opinion on that of go woke, go broke, or whatever people say. Um, through that, like, oh, if you make a movie kind of this politically opinion, you won't make money. Well, what about Barbie? Barbie made a ton of money. It made $1 billion. Um, there are two aspects of that I can argue with. One thing, Barbie is an IP. It's an already made thing. So I believe a bunch of its audiences went there just because, oh, some of it's maybe girls that grew up playing with Barbies, or moms who showing up like their kids play with Barbies. So it's an IP. They already have a latchable factor to make money because like everybody knows Barbie, like you see it on like commercials or stuff like that. But another factor is the trailers and
Mm.
marketing. I truly believe the marketing and trailers lie to audiences. One of the best reviews I can recommend you watch is the Critical Drinker's review of Barbie.
Mm.
And his opinion on it, the trailers made it look like it was just a fun kids movie. And that's what I
Right.
went into expecting it to be like, oh, this is a kids movie. Uh, so marketing lied about what the movie really was. So when you go see the movie, you get a completely different movie. You get a manifesto of a female director's ideas instead of a kids movie based off an IP.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's false marketing and just having an IP is what made it money. Just it wasn't
Yeah.
because it was good.
Right.
I think maybe not with the second point, but I think that the first point you could definitely apply that to the Star Wars universe or even maybe Marvel, where it's like yeah, was it a terrible movie? Okay, maybe it wasn't a terrible movie, but for what it could have been, it was a terrible movie. But any Star Wars movie that comes out is going to make a lot of money. It's not going to make as much money as it should, but if it's a bad movie and the plot's terrible and you kill off characters that you shouldn't, or the laundry list of items that are wrong with the movies, but because Star Wars is such an established piece of IP, one of the biggest ever, it's going to be really, really difficult to make a movie that no one goes to see. And I know people that are huge Star Wars fans that just haven't gone to see the last 3 or 4 movies, but there's way more people that are still just going because, they're big fans and they keep praying that it's going to get better, even if they don't think it will. But it's going to keep making money. I think eventually, if they keep butchering the Star Wars universe, it may stop making money, or at least it may go down enough that they, make some changes. But it seems like a lot of big universes, I guess you'd say, or big IPs are making less money than they really should be, and they're really failing. But they're such a dominant force that it's like, yeah, maybe they made half, but they're still making triple of what everyone else is making. Um, but it is nice to see some of those numbers going down, and then you see Sound of Freedom, beating a bunch of these big films, even though it's not I mean, it was a big film, but it wasn't a huge Hollywood film. It wasn't popular in Hollywood. Got a lot of, criticism, and the same thing with Top Gun Maverick, the same thing with the new Mission Impossible. And now they weren't as Christian in their messaging, but it was just pure entertainment. Like, it didn't have political stuff. It was just like, this is going to be a good time. And then they do really well. And then you see Star Wars and, all of these other movies going Indiana Jones, you see Lightyear, all of these Disney movies tanking because they're putting in woke stuff, especially in the kids movies. You're putting woke stuff into
Yeah.
kids content, and that's why the Daily Wire launched Benki, because they were like, well, forget this, we're doing our own thing, because clearly now they're attacking children.
And we need that own thing to fight against what's right and what's wrong. Give our kids something good to watch. Like when you mentioned earlier, long earlier, with Matt Walsh's documentary of What is a Woman. Now, I'm not much of a documentary watcher, to be honest. That's a genre that I have never had that much of an interest in, documentaries. But watching that, I found it really good. So we got to know what to keep away from people versus what should be seen, like I mentioned before. And with the box office tanking, it's shocking how it works. Like Sound of Freedom, I think from what the director said on a podcast, the film didn't even go over $10 million on a budget. So, and it made back so much money because it was a sleeper hit and from word of mouth. And that's crazy how this under $10 million movie, which I might be wrong on that because they never officially said the budget, but it was somewhere near that, made so much more money than say the $400 million produced Indiana Jones, or say another $200 million produced Pixar animated movie like Elementals. So it's showing we have those rare occasions like with Sound of Freedom. Like, this is what we like. This is what needs to be seen. This is what we want as an audience. Do that.
Yeah. If you had the opportunity, would you also try to work for Angel Studios if you could, or do you think that the Daily Wire is a little bit more um kind of where you're pursuing, like that's kind of more where your interests lie?
I would love to work with both. Um, it'd be a dream to work with both if I ever had the chance. I, like I said, I've never really gotten to my own personal beliefs in my movies, but I've been slowly devolving into being open about my opinion. Like in my scripts, not being, I say, annoying about it, but also having them have a factor to the story. Because my first script that I wrote, that's the one I want to send to Dallas when I polish it up, is it's a pro cop story. It's a it's a heroic tale that I have about it, about redemption. And so I want to complete that, which I've been told by another person who's read the script that Hollywood would not make your movie.
Mm.
Mhm.
And so I was like, and I said, I will take that as a great compliment. So once I finish it up, I'd love to send it to him. but I'm also writing my first religious movie. I'm writing 3 scripts at once, by the way, right now, which is a load
Nice.
onto my back. But it's currently my main project that I'm putting a lot of focus on. It's just a religious, not I wouldn't say another redemption tale, but a travel story, a story of more hope and spreading the message of God in a world where in a alternate world that I have wrote down where we have lost God.
Hmm.
And so it's shining that light back into the world of what I'm writing. I'm going to keep the story as of right now more to the low, but it's more about that spreading the message more in a world that has lost it.
How do you think that you can do that effectively without being preachy? Because I think that that's a pretty common critique of Christian film companies where they either don't focus on the faith and Christianity and morality enough, and then it's like, is this even a Christian movie? It seems like low budget, and I'm not really getting a lot of faith here. Or all you're getting is faith, and then you're like, I like what you're saying, but it's not coming through like Sound of Freedom, where there's definitely Christian themes and there's, hints of Christianity, and you maybe see a crucifix and someone's praying and makes the sign of the cross and little hints at it, but it's not just someone, like in a church and has a homily, right? Those are two very different things. So how do you think that you can write something that gets that message across without people taking it in a bad way?
If you ask me what is the hardest genre of writing there is, it is Christian. Because I believe writing a Christian story is insanely hard without having it feel very, I'd say, overbearing with a message, but also keeping that message in a tone level where the audience can fully understand and support it. Um, Take ideas of The Shift. The Shift has more religious imagery than Sound of Freedom did, because while Sound of Freedom did have like Christian values and morals in it, that wasn't, really the main focus behind it. Like the story was, about human trafficking, but it did have those religious themes in the middle of it. But The Shift heavily focused on the religious theme of our main character basically being a new version of Job, because that's what the whole movie is about. It's a sci-fi retelling of Job. So with our main character in that movie, Kevin, him just having the power of prayer, like every time he wakes up in the movie in his apartment, he prays, or how the power of prayer takes away the villain, the benefactor. It's and him mentioning all the time about God and how there is hope and how he is more than the worst things he has done. That is what I believe is like some of the best Christian filmmaking is what's coming from Angel Studios. Now I have seen some other good ones as well. I really like that movie Courageous from the Kendrick
Yeah.
brothers.
I was going to ask if
I've
you
seen
had
a bunch.
seen that because you mentioned the cop script that you're writing, and that's what I immediately thought of is the Courageous movie that they made.
Yes, I love what the Kendrick brothers are making. Like I found that their earlier work is more low budget, which is a very understandable from how they started out.
Yeah.
But once they found their footing, through Courageous and what they've made onward, I loved it. I loved War Room. I loved Overcomer.
Mm,
That's the kind of Christian filmmaking I really like. And like I said, there are some others too. I really liked I Can Only Imagine. And so, but then there are a few I've seen out there that I genuinely think are not good movies. There are
mm,
some studios out there that just don't know how to write the Christian movie.
yeah.
Like, I have no idea if y'all like the movie or not, but for me, I really do not like the God's Not Dead movies.
Have I seen? Oh, yeah, I have seen that. Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I haven't seen the second one. The first one, yeah, it was kind of trying to take a religious debate that should be on YouTube and make it into a movie and then add different
Yeah,
plot lines, and then it just adds like Christian rock music to make moments dramatic, and it was like, no, you're not really proving me that God is real from this. It's not the correct approach. It needs to be a dialogue and not a film. Um,
and that's what
yeah.
I've seen. There are sadly so many of them now. There's 4 currently, and the fifth one
Wow.
just got filmed.
Oh
Oh,
my goodness.
Uh, I've seen all of them, and I'm not a fan of them. That's
Yeah.
because from what you said, it didn't feel like I'm being told that our Father is here. It felt more of just. It felt like a capitalist film. Well, not really. Oh, that's the right word. It just felt like it didn't really. Those movies don't really care about what they're making, and just more care about the box office.
Yeah.
They see a target audience and they go for it. While Angel Studios or other studios like the Kendrick brothers do care about spreading that good word, that good message. And so I try to look at studios that I know I want to work with. And so I keep that bearing in mind, which is weird because the writers of God's Not Dead also wrote a movie last year that I consider really good. It wasn't made by the people that made God's Not Dead, but it was just written by the same screenwriters. It was a movie called Nefarious.
Yes, great film.
I loved that movie.
Yeah.
I see that as a redemption arc for those screenwriters.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but Mark recommended it to me, and then I think someone watched it recently and told me, like, kind of reminded me to watch it again. You said it's the same screenwriters?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
I see it as their redemption arc of, oh, they just needed time. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so see, that movie is great. That had good religious themes inside of it. And so it really just comes down, I think, really to the writer. But for me, writing a script, I'm not wanting to fall into God's Not Dead's category. I'm wanting to tell my story as me being a Christian, and but also trying to tell people how good this is, how heartwarming, how much better life is with this. Because for me, back in high school, I became an atheist for 3 years of my life. And for me, I considered those 3 years the worst years I ever had. I was not happy. I was very nihilistic. So I just fell into a plummet. But it was in 2020, conveniently the year of COVID. Uh, but in 2020, where I found my faith again. And since I did, I have been the happiest I ever have been.
Wow. Well, God bless you for that. Was there friends or family that brought you back, or was that a mixture of things that kind of brought you back to start kind
It
of
was,
practicing again?
I got invited to a church sermon that was on a Sunday morning, and I went just because I was being nice. And so I went and I listened to the sermon, and that sermon changed my life. Of me not wanting to feel lost anymore, to feel like I'm always being seen, because he's always there watching, protecting. And so with that, it's made me realize I've been doing the wrong things with my life during those 3 years of not being a believer. I was like, this is my calling. Like how filmmaking is my calling, but also being a follower of God is also my calling. And I will never forget that day when I realized I am a child of God.
Yeah, and that's what a special moment to have, because I think most people either, don't practice any faith, don't adhere to anything, or they do, but they've just been raised in that, and so they kind of just do it habitually, and they don't really think about it. And maybe they'll have moments in their life where they feel like God answered their prayer, or they feel like God interceded for them, or maybe they have this kind of interior inclination to be good to people, but it doesn't really extend beyond that. They don't really dig into it that much more. So the fact that you were raised in that way, but then were able to come back and kind of see what you were missing out on, and then kind of hit it full force is really awesome to hear. And I'm glad to hear that. Good for you. Uh, Especially at the time, right? COVID is a horribly isolating time, and you're in high school, or it's like that's a really hard time for people. That's the highest percentile of people that fall away from the faith and fall away from just turn their back on God, So
It was
awesome.
very convenient. It was at that beginning of the year, like in January, where it was like the start of a new me, basically. Me becoming a better person, or me just being more faithful with it. Like, I try my best to go to church when I can, but sadly, with me being in college I don't have a lot of time. And so I always try my best reading the Bible. I I have the Bible app because, thankfully for phones, there are some things that we can have on our pockets at all times. And so when I can, I'll go on the app and just read certain scriptures that they recommend
Mhm.
just to keep up my heart of where I know I am.
Have you ever used the Hallow app?
No, I haven't.
Have you heard of it? Do you know what Hallow is?
No.
So they're this huge I didn't even hear about it until a couple years ago, but they're this huge, it's a huge app, and they've got a bunch of I think Jim Caviezel's one of the people that's on there. A couple of I think it's mostly Catholic people that are on there. So Father Mike Schmitz, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's on there. I think Liam Neeson might be on there now, but they hire these actors and influencers, I guess is kind of the right word. And they have gospel reflections, and I think they might just have scripture where you can just click on the Gospel of Mark and just listen to it from whoever wants to read it, whoever's reading it, you can select a reader. But they also have prayers and meditation things. And I've heard that a lot of Christians use it because they have trouble, especially in today's day and age, they have trouble like you were saying, you have trouble sitting down and just reading. And so if you can just listen to it, maybe you don't catch as much, but you also uh, you can have it on in the background while you're driving somewhere or something like that. I think it's a paid subscription, but it's not that much. I think Jordan Peterson may be on it as well. So they've got a lot of big name people that do readings on there, and I've heard a lot of really really good things about it. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you want if you want Jim Caviezel, or I think Mark Wahlberg is the other big one that's on there. He's a huge advocate for it. So if you want Mark Wahlberg to read you the Gospel of John, I would recommend you checking that out.
Look, you instantly hooked me when you said Jim Caviezel. I was like, I'm already buying it. I'm getting it.
Isn't he? I've grown to respect him so much. I mean, obviously, I was a big fan of The Passion, but after that, it's like, okay, The Passion, and then you don't really hear about him, and you're not really sure what he. But I started looking into some of his earlier movies, like Count of Monte Cristo and the Person of Interest. I love that. I love that TV show. Like, just so many good things that he's been involved in, and then he just came with Sound of Freedom and just knocked it out of the park. Like, and especially at the end, even though like after the movie was over and he's just sitting there basically telling you to come watch it, I was like that got me more like almost more emotionally than anything else because he was
Yes.
just so worked up about it. So yeah, what a guy.
Caviezel is one of the lead actors I want to work with one day. Like I have a list of people I want to work with, and he is basically at the top of the list.
Hmm.
Well, and I agree with that on his films. Like everybody knows him for like saying a lot of people know him now for Sound of Freedom, but a lot of people also know him for playing Jesus, which is also a great. I loved Passion. I thought it was a great movie, but it's also that thing. He's done so much. He's done so much other movies in his career. Like I'm not trying to de facto out like Passion or anything. That's still a great thing, but he's done so much stuff that people also need to see too that he's been a part of. Like you said, Person of Interest, Count of Monte Cristo. Another one of his movies I consider fantastic is Frequency. That's a sci-fi film, which is
Mhm.
amazing.
I haven't
And
seen
so
that. Have you seen the Red Thin Line, or I think it's Red Thin Line, something like that? That he's
that's one I haven't got
Thin
around
Red
to yet.
Line.
No.
Okay, yeah, I think I made a list of like 15 movies that he was in, and I'm like, I'm gonna get through all these at some point because I just think he's an awesome actor.
Yeah, like if now knowing that he's in that podcast, he has. I read a tweet. I think it was saying like Jim Caviezel's voice is like better than a glass of milk, like a warm
Yeah,
glass of milk. So like
yeah, yeah,
I don't blame you on that part.
yeah, yeah. Look it
So
up and,
I'll
and
look that
see
up.
and see what you think. And then let me know if you do start using it. I'd be happy to hear that you started using it because of me.
Sponsored by Hallow.
Hey,
It's
no
sponsored
worries.
by Hallow, right? Yeah, maybe
This
someday
is
we'll
a
get
secret
sponsored.
sponsorship.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I wanted to thank you for coming on. It's about an hour and a half, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I want to commend you for taking a risk to come on a podcast that you've never heard of, that you heard, you figured out the day before was Catholic, and from some guy you've never met. I don't know if I would have done that, but I'm very thankful that you decided to give it a shot, and I hope you had a good time. And if in the future, if one of your, if Dallas reads one of your scripts, or you're able to get on one of the Daily Wire shows or something, I'm sure you'll have bigger outlets that will want to talk to you, but I would love to talk to you again just to get some behind the scenes on that. Maybe we can have you back on to talk about the Pendragon cycle or something like that. Just yeah, it would be awesome just to have someone else on and to talk about it again.
Look, no worries, man. I had a great time doing this. Just being able to talk with you guys about my religious beliefs or what my ideas of filmmaking are, but just talking about movies in general. I have been told I need to shut up because I talk about movies too much. So just being able to talk about it and ramble on with like y'all who like movies as well and just want to know what kind of movies need to be made. It's it's heartwarming, I'd say, because it's heart healing just being talk about something that you love.
Mhm.
So I had an absolute blast. If I'm able to do this again, if y'all want me on here again, absolutely just hit me up and I'll say yes.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. In the meantime, if you want to watch Lord of the Rings, I would maybe make that a requirement for the next time. Some point, put it on your list. Make it a priority for 2024, maybe.
I'll make that one of my now New Year's resolutions.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, Alex, thanks for coming on the show. Blast talking to you, and yeah, reach out anytime. We'd love to have you back on at some point, and you'll get to meet our third host. And yeah, keep up all the good work. Best luck in college and your 3 scripts that you're writing. It sounds like a lot, so don't go crazy.
I'll try not to. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Alex. This is the Doing Virtue podcast,
Catholic one.
and virtue is what we do. Cheers. Thanks, Alex.